Every human being carries within them a silent, often unrecognized hunger. A hunger not for comfort, not for ease, not for the familiar rhythms of life, but for growth. This desire is subtle, does not announce itself with loud proclamations or dramatic gestures. It whispers in moments of quiet reflection, stirs in times of challenge, and pulses beneath the surface, even when life seems completely ordinary. Most people never notice it, because it is easily overshadowed by the demands of daily life, the clamor of social expectations, and the comforting illusion of safety. Yet this hidden desire for growth is perhaps the most powerful force driving human evolution, creativity, and resilience. The human brain is wired to resist discomfort. From childhood, we are trained to avoid pain and seek security. When faced with something difficult, the natural response is to retreat, to cling to the familiar, to rationalize why avoidance is sensible. But beneath this instinctive reaction lies another current, a current that silently urges us to rise to the challenge, to stretch beyond the boundaries of what we already know, to explore the uncharted territories within ourselves. It is this inner pull that separates ordinary survival from extraordinary living. The hidden desire for growth often manifests through subtle signals, a nagging sense of dissatisfaction, a restless curiosity, a quiet questioning of the patterns and routines that dominate our lives. It shows up as the urge to learn something new, to face a fear we have long avoided, or to pursue a vision that seems too ambitious, too audacious. This desire does not always announce itself with clarity. Sometimes it appears as discomfort, frustration, or a feeling that life is somehow incomplete. Those who ignore it may rationalize their avoidance as practicality or caution, yet the inner pull persists, like a compass pointing toward a path that promises transformation. Psychologically, growth is inseparable from challenge. The mind does not evolve in a vacuum. It evolves when confronted with something that tests its limits. Growth demands effort, risk, and often a confrontation with our own limitations and shadows. The hidden desire for growth is intimately linked with this confrontation, because deep within we crave the feeling of expanding beyond what we were yesterday. It is a quiet rebellion against stagnation, a refusal to accept mediocrity, and a longing to touch the potential that lies dormant within. Ironically, the more we resist discomfort, the more this desire asserts itself. When life is too comfortable, the mind begins to stir restlessly. We experience boredom, unease, and a subtle dissatisfaction that cannot be explained by external circumstances. This dissatisfaction is not a flaw, it is a signal. It is the hidden desire for growth calling us forward, reminding us that we are meant to evolve, to test the limits of our abilities, to embrace challenges as opportunities rather than threats. Some of the most transformative moments in human history, both personal and collective, emerge from this hidden desire. Artists, scientists, leaders, and thinkers have all been driven by an inner restlessness, an unspoken yearning to create, discover, or transform. It is not the external reward, recognition, or material gain that motivates them first. It is the internal pull toward growth, the need to become more than they were before. This desire is timeless, transcending culture, circumstance, and era, because it is rooted in the fundamental nature of human consciousness. Recognizing this hidden desire requires courage. It requires the willingness to pause, to look inward, and to acknowledge that our instincts for safety are often in conflict with our deeper longings. It requires us to notice the moments when life feels uncomfortable or incomplete, and to ask why. Within these moments lie the subtle clues of growth, hints that the mind is inviting us to stretch, to confront fear, and to embrace the unfamiliar. Once acknowledged, this desire can be cultivated. Practices such as reflection, journaling, meditation, and deliberate challenge allow the mind to align with its hidden drive. Growth becomes not just an abstract ideal, but a lived reality. experienced through each decision to face difficulty, to pursue knowledge, and to explore the depths of one's own potential. Even when unrecognized, the hidden desire for growth shapes behavior, choices, and longings. It influences the restless nights, the sudden impulses to change, the drawn to passions that feel inexplicable. It is a force that cannot be extinguished, only ignored, and its persistence is a testament to the innate human drive towards self-realization, mastery, and transformation. Every person carries within them a shadow, an unseen and often unacknowledged part of the psyche that holds all the traits, fears, desires, and impulses that society, upbringing, or personal morality has deemed unacceptable. The shadow is not inherently negative. It is simply the collection of aspects we have rejected, ignored, or denied. Yet it wields immense influence over our behavior, thoughts, and choices. It shapes our fears, our insecurities, and often our hidden motivations. To grow, to evolve, and to step into one's full potential, it becomes essential to confront this shadow, to bring it from the depths of the unconscious into conscious awareness. The first challenge in confronting the shadow is recognition. It is not a voice that announces itself clearly. It whispers through subtle signs, through recurring patterns, and through emotional reactions that feel out of proportion. Perhaps you find yourself irrationally angry at someone, overly critical of others, or consumed by envy and resentment. These emotions, though often dismissed as external reactions, are reflections of your own shadow, mirror the traits you have disowned within yourself. Recognizing these patterns requires honesty, humility, and the willingness to see yourself without filters or excuses. Fear is the primary obstacle in facing the shadow. The shadow represents the unknown within us, the parts of ourselves that we have been conditioned to avoid. There is a natural resistance because acknowledging the shadow can feel threatening. It may reveal weaknesses, impulses, or desires we have long denied. Yet it is precisely this confrontation that leads to transformation. The shadow is not meant to be eradicated, it is meant to be integrated. By facing it, you reclaim the power that has been unconsciously guiding your choices, often in ways that sabotage your growth and happiness. Confronting the shadow requires observing without judgment. When the shadow manifests through jealousy, fear, greed, or even self-sabotaging behaviors, resist the urge to condemn yourself. Condemnation only strengthens repression, pushing these aspects further into the unconscious, where they continue to influence behavior indirectly. Instead, approach your shadow with curiosity and compassion. Ask why these feelings or traits exist. Trace their origins and acknowledge their presence. Each discovery is a doorway, a chance to understand the underlying motivations that have shaped your life, and to reclaim the energy trapped in avoidance and denial. The process of integrating the shadow is not simple or linear. It requires patience and persistence. Often the shadow will manifest repeatedly, testing your willingness to confront it. Each encounter is an opportunity to examine the fear or impulse without reaction, to observe it as a reflection of your internal landscape. Over time, this repeated awareness diminishes the shadow's unconscious power. What once caused confusion or self-sabotage begins to be understood as part of your psyche, a complex system of drives and needs that, when acknowledged, can be channeled constructively. Shadow work also reveals hidden strengths, many qualities we repress: ambition, assertiveness, creativity, sensuality, or independence, are parts of the shadow labeled as unacceptable by external norms or internalized beliefs. By confronting and integrating these traits, you not only free yourself from unconscious patterns, but also gain access to capacities that were previously hidden. The shadow, once understood, becomes a source of authenticity and power, allowing actions to align more closely with true desires rather than fear-based reactions. Relationships act as mirrors in shadow work. Often the traits we despise in others are reflections of what we deny in ourselves. Anger at a colleague, resentment toward a partner, or envy of a friend can be invitations to examine the corresponding shadow aspects within. Recognizing these mirrors allows for profound self-discovery and can transform the way you relate to the world. What initially seems like external conflict becomes an internal opportunity, an invitation to engage consciously with the entirety of your psyche. Shadow integration is also deeply connected to creativity and personal fulfillment. By confronting the shadow, you access the parts of yourself that were previously hidden, opening the door to new perspectives, innovative ideas, and authentic expression. The energy once spent suppressing fear, desire, or ambition can be redirected toward constructive action. Growth, resilience, and personal power emerge not by ignoring the shadow, but by engaging with it. By accepting it as an integral part of the self that, once illuminated, transforms fear into understanding, repression into energy, and fragmentation into wholeness. Confronting the shadow is a journey that asks for courage, honesty, and ongoing vigilance. It is not a one-time realization, but a lifelong engagement with the aspects of self that resist exposure. Each step into the shadow brings clarity, freedom, and a deeper connection with your authentic self. Pain is one of the most universal human experiences, yet it is also one of the most misunderstood. From an early age, we are conditioned to avoid pain at almost any cost. Society, culture, and even our closest relationships often teach us that suffering is something to escape, deny, or suppress. We instinctively recoil from it, fearing its intensity and the discomfort it brings. And yet beneath every moment of pain lies a hidden potential, a doorway to growth, insight, and transformation that remains unseen when we view pain purely as misfortune. Learning to reframe pain as opportunity is one of the most powerful steps toward mastery of the mind and fulfillment of one's potential. The first step in this process is awareness. Pain signals something essential about our lives. It points to imbalance, unmet needs, unresolved conflict, or unexpressed truth. The discomfort you feel is not arbitrary, it is meaningful. It carries information about what matters, what has been neglected, and what is calling for attention. The challenge lies not in avoiding the pain, but in observing it clearly without judgment. When we pause long enough to study the sensation, we begin to see that pain is not merely an obstacle, it is a messenger, urging reflection and action. Pain also acts as a catalyst for psychological growth. The human mind is often complacent when life is easy. We are conditioned to seek comfort and routine, and in this state, growth is limited. Pain interrupts this comfort, forcing us to confront aspects of ourselves that we would rather ignore. Whether it is failure, loss, rejection, or criticism, these experiences provoke the mind to reconsider assumptions, challenge habitual patterns, and develop resilience. Every difficult moment holds lessons that cannot be taught through ease. In this sense, pain is an instrument of awakening, a tool that can sharpen awareness and expand the boundaries of our capabilities. The way we interpret pain determines its impact. When we view difficulty as meaningless or unfair, it becomes a source of suffering. When we shift perspective, even slightly, pain can be reframed as a necessary step in a larger process. The mind has the remarkable ability to construct meaning, and by choosing to see challenges as opportunities, we activate a new neural framework in which growth, learning, and adaptation are prioritized over fear, resentment, or avoidance. This is not mere positive thinking. It is a conscious retraining of the psyche to engage with adversity constructively. Another powerful aspect of reframing pain is ownership. When pain is imposed externally through circumstances, relationships, or loss, it can feel like something happening to us. This sense of victimhood magnifies suffering. But when we take responsibility for how we respond, when we recognize that within every painful moment lies a choice about interpretation and action, the dynamic shifts. Pain becomes a teacher rather than a tyrant. The moment we claim agency, even in the smallest way, we convert passive suffering into active transformation, turning what was once unbearable into a vehicle for growth. Reframing pain as opportunity also involves embracing discomfort as a sign of progress. Just as physical exercise causes micro tears in muscle fibers that ultimately strengthen the body, emotional, and psychological pain strains our internal systems in ways that create resilience and adaptability. The ache signals that boundaries are being tested, that the mind and spirit are expanding, and that something significant is occurring beneath the surface. Learning to welcome this sensation, rather than fear it, rewires the mind to see difficulty as a marker of meaningful engagement with life rather than a threat to survival. Creativity and insight often emerge from pain. Moments of intense struggle strip away superficial distractions, leaving the mind in a heightened state of awareness. Ideas, solutions, and self-understanding that could not surface in comfort now arise. Pain focuses attention and sharpens perception, revealing truths about ourselves, others, and the world that would otherwise remain hidden. It provides depth, perspective, and the kind of wisdom that comes only from lived experience. Lastly, reframing pain is a practice, not a single act. It requires continual awareness, reflection, and self-compassion. We must learn to pause in discomfort, examine its source, interpret its meaning, and act in alignment with growth rather than fear. Each encounter with pain strengthens this capacity, creating a feedback loop in which difficulty itself becomes a sought-after teacher rather than a dreaded adversary. Through this lens, pain is no longer an enemy, but an instrument of transformation, a signal of awakening, and an invitation to evolve. Rituals and habits are among the most underestimated forces in shaping human behavior, yet they wield a power far greater than sheer willpower or motivation. While motivation is fleeting and willpower can be exhausted, rituals and habits operate on a deeper level, bypassing conscious resistance and engaging the unconscious mind in a way that facilitates transformation. They are the architecture through which growth, discipline, and mastery are built, quietly guiding the mind toward patterns of success, even when we feel incapable or unmotivated. Understanding their significance and learning to design them intentionally is essential for anyone seeking to navigate difficulty with consistency and purpose. At their core, habits are automatic responses, the brain's way of conserving energy by encoding repeated behaviors into patterns that require minimal conscious effort. This efficiency is useful for daily life, brushing teeth, tying shoes, commuting, but it can also be harnessed for personal growth. When we attach habits to meaningful challenges, the brain begins to accept difficulty as part of its routine. By taking small, repeated actions toward a goal, we gradually rewire neural pathways, making the once difficult natural and approachable. The most remarkable changes often arise not from sudden bursts of effort, but from consistent, disciplined engagement with structured routines. Rituals elevate habits by adding intention, symbolism, and focus. Whereas a habit might be simply the act of waking early or exercising, a ritual transforms that act into a deliberate practice imbued with significance. For example, beginning each morning with a quiet reflection, visualization, or affirmation is more than a routine. It becomes a ritual that aligns the mind with purpose and prepares it to face challenges consciously. Rituals anchor behavior to identity. They tell the mind, both consciously and unconsciously, who we are and who we are becoming. Over time, these symbolic actions consolidate the mental and emotional frameworks necessary for resilience, courage, and self-discipline. The strength of rituals and habits lies in their ability to bypass resistance. One of the greatest barriers to doing difficult things is the mind's natural aversion to discomfort. Willpower alone is unreliable. The brain instinctively seeks pleasure and avoids pain. Habits and rituals circumvent this limitation by transforming action into routine. When a behavior becomes habitual, the brain no longer debates whether it is worth the effort. It simply executes the pattern. In this way, we can accomplish tasks that once felt daunting, maintain consistency in personal growth, and navigate challenges without relying on fluctuating motivation. Rituals and habits also create predictability in an unpredictable world. Life's uncertainties often trigger anxiety, procrastination, or avoidance, particularly when facing difficult tasks. By anchoring ourselves in consistent practices, we provide the mind with stability and structure. This reliability fosters confidence, reduces internal friction, and allows energy to be directed toward mastering challenges rather than battling indecision or distraction. The smallest, most intentional routines can become the scaffolding upon which the mind builds competence and courage. Another crucial aspect is incremental progression. Habits work best when challenges are broken down into manageable steps. The brain resists abrupt or overwhelming change, but it adapts when difficulty is introduced gradually. A ritualized practice that incrementally pushes boundaries, such as daily focused work sessions, timed learning, or incremental physical training, trains the mind to embrace challenge over time. What begins as small, intentional acts eventually compounds into a transformative force, rewiring perception so that effort, once resisted, becomes natural and even desirable. Rituals and habits also reinforce identity and self-perception. When we consistently engage in challenging behaviors, our unconscious mind begins to internalize these actions as reflections of who we are. The act of showing up day after day shapes the story we tell ourselves about our capabilities. Over time, the narrative shifts. We are no longer someone who struggles with difficulty or avoids challenges. We are someone who meets obstacles head-on, guided by structure, discipline, and intentional practice. The beauty of rituals is that they operate on multiple levels simultaneously. They condition behavior, reinforce mindset, and influence emotional states. A morning ritual can prime the mind for focus, reduce anxiety about tasks, and instill a sense of purpose before the world imposes its demands. Habits act as the scaffolding, while rituals provide meaning, ensuring that repeated action is not mechanical but deeply transformative. Together, they convert intention into reality and create a fertile environment for embracing the difficult, the unfamiliar, and the demanding. When approached consciously, rituals and habits become tools for mastery, channels through which the mind learns to accept and even seek challenge, turning what once felt overwhelming into a structured and manageable path. Every thought we think is part of an ongoing conversation within ourselves, a continuous inner dialogue that shapes perception, behavior, and experience. Most of this dialogue happens automatically below the level of conscious awareness, yet its influence is profound. It colors the way we interpret challenges, the way we respond to difficulty, and the expectations we hold for our own abilities. Inner dialogue is not merely a reflection of the mind, it is a tool, a force, and a mirror through which we can direct attention, cultivate resilience, and even force the brain to want what it once resisted. Understanding and harnessing this internal conversation is essential for anyone who wishes to accomplish difficult tasks, develop mastery, or transform their life. At the core, inner dialogue is the mechanism by which the conscious and unconscious mind communicate. Often, this dialogue is critical, dismissive, or self-limiting, repeating old patterns and reinforcing fear. Thoughts like, "I can't do this," "I'm not strong enough," or "this is too hard," are not objective truths. They are echoes of past experiences, internalized judgments, or habitual fears. When repeated, they shape perception, making difficulty seem insurmountable and reinforcing avoidance. Yet, the very same mechanism that can limit us can also empower us when consciously directed. The first step in harnessing inner dialogue is awareness. One must notice the tone, content, and patterns of thoughts without judgment. Awareness is crucial because the unconscious mind responds to repeated patterns, not isolated ideas. When negative or self-limiting thoughts dominate, they create neural pathways that make resistance to difficulty automatic. Observing these thoughts allows one to pause, examine their origin, and choose whether to reinforce or redirect them. It is in this space of conscious recognition that transformation begins. Once awareness is established, the next step is intentional redirection. The mind is malleable, and through repeated practice, the inner dialogue can be retrained. Replace self-criticism with constructive guidance, fear with curiosity, and doubt with deliberate encouragement. For example, instead of saying, "I can't handle this task," one can choose to say, "This is challenging and I will approach it one step at a time." This subtle shift changes how the unconscious mind interprets difficulty. The brain begins to associate effort with capability rather than threat, discomfort with growth rather than punishment. Visualization amplifies the power of inner dialogue. By imagining success vividly and repeatedly, the mind experiences the sensations of accomplishment before they occur in reality. When coupled with supportive internal language, visualization primes neural circuits for action, making difficult tasks feel more familiar and achievable. The inner conversation moves from skepticism to strategy, from fear to focus, creating a cognitive environment in which challenge becomes a call to action rather than a reason to avoid. Consistency is the key to deep transformation. The unconscious mind is shaped over time by repetition. A single positive thought is unlikely to rewire the brain, but persistent, deliberate dialogue gradually builds new neural pathways. Daily engagement with supportive, goal-oriented self-talk conditions the mind to respond to challenge automatically with courage, creativity, and persistence. Habits of inner dialogue, reinforced through conscious effort, eventually replace old narratives of avoidance with new narratives of empowerment. Emotional tone is equally important in this process. Inner dialogue is not merely about content, it is about the way the content is expressed. Thoughts laden with fear or urgency trigger stress responses that make difficulty feel threatening. Conversely, a calm, confident, and patient tone signals the brain that the challenge is manageable. The mind internalizes not just the message, but the emotional quality, learning to approach obstacles with steady focus rather than reactive panic. Inner dialogue also functions as a mirror of identity. The words and phrases we use with ourselves communicate who we believe we are and who we can become. Repeatedly framing oneself as capable, resilient, and resourceful gradually solidifies an identity aligned with those qualities. Alignment is critical because the brain is far more likely to engage in difficult tasks when it perceives them as consistent with a coherent sense of self. In this way, inner dialogue is not just a cognitive tool, it is a mechanism for shaping character and unlocking latent potential. Ultimately, the power of inner dialogue lies in its ability to turn the mind from an adversary into an ally. The thoughts we cultivate, the phrases we repeat, and the tone we use can shift perception, regulate emotion, and direct action. When harnessed intentionally, this internal conversation can convince the brain to embrace difficulty, to seek growth, and to act in alignment with potential that once seemed unreachable.